Good morning. I'd like to call the Committee on Rules to order. Please call the roll.
Thank you, baby. You got me. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 8 bills in here this morning, and we're going to get through these expeditiously as previously reported. If anyone wanted to speak on these bills virtually, had to sign up 30 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. And we will be timing any testimony here this morning. So we will begin with Senator Roan.
Before you today is SJR 19, and I'll note that we have an amendment that Council has if you'd like to adopt that.
Okay, report the amendment. Let's hear the amendment first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first amendment is on line 28. After by, strike November 30th, 2024, and insert June 30th, 2025. The second amendment is on line 32. After of the, strike 2025, and insert 2026.
I move that we adopt those two amendments.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the amendments be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The amendments are adopted. And what does SJ 19 do, Senator Roan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the resolution before you now would request that VDOT consider the feasibility of implementing roadway and pedestrian improvements in Gainesville along Somerset Crossing Drive. VDOT would evaluate the current safety of this road and will, in turn, produce analyses that will inform future decisions regarding the safety of drivers, bikers, and walking pedestrians. And so, Madam Chair, Somerset Crossing, it's a 2-mile stretch of road in the western portion of Gainesville with basically no traffic calming measures, unrestricted turn lanes, and long straightaways, and with poor sight lines in a residential neighborhood where it is a 4-lane divided highway with 45-mile-an-hour speed limits. And in July of last year, we had a horrible situation where after years of people warnings that something like this would happen, we had a minivan strike a pedestrian who was in the crosswalk, instantly killed. And Madam Chair, I'd like to just take liberty here to, I've asked staff here to please, or in council, to provide you all with a statement that came from 2 of my constituents, which they're now going to pass out for you. I'm going to just read to you just a couple brief sentences from these, and I'll leave the rest of this to y'all's discretion here. My constituent, Justin Settle, he saw what happened as he was walking his dog at the time. And toward the end of this, he said, "I was deeply upset and remain impacted by what I saw that day. We don't cross Somerset Crossing Drive as often anymore, preferring to avoid any chance of an accident. For months after, we walked past that spot on the asphalt stained with blood where the man came to rest. While the stain has faded in the months that have followed, I know where the spot is, and I always will. I write to plead with you today to do anything you can to keep our community from suffering another loss on this unsafe roadway. Our community is devastated by the accident and is afraid of it happening again." And then Lisa Solinsky, who's the vice president of the Somerset Crossing Board of Directors, she writes, "The initial poor design of the highway focusing on speed and no existing traffic calming devices makes the current condition on Somerset Crossing Drive flawed, hazardous, and deadly. Safety on Somerset Crossing Drive needs to be first. Please consider having the Department of Transportation study the feasibility of implementing improvements so that safety can be first on Somerset Crossing Drive." Now, with that, Madam Chair, I'll note that the resolution before you today is a request rather than a directive. And so that means that we file this as a resolution so that we are asking VDOT to do this instead of giving them a directive to do this. In support of that, we have an optional budget amendment of $300,000 that we did include. And if the committee wishes to move forward with that, I'm sure VDOT would be thrilled to have it. But by having this tailored as a request rather than a directive, it's designed to give the committee and the General Assembly as much flexibility as you wish in order to deal with this, so that if VDOT needs to do anything within their existing budget without the budget amendment, That's an option. If they choose to do nothing, again, it's a request, it's not directive. But if we do pass this with the budget amendment, we're confident that we can get something done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions? Anyone here in support of SJ 19?
Madam Chair, I've asked my folks not to
1
come in
minute.
today. But
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Glenn Loop for Prince William County. We support the bill. Every now and then it takes an action such as this to bring everybody to the table to solve a problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in support? Anyone online? Anyone here in opposition? Okay, we have SJ 19. Second. It's been moved and seconded that SJ 19 be reported. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That's reported.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to members.
Senator Aird. Okay. Senator McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm presenting Senate Bill 603. This bill requires a work group to complete a study to find ways that can improve and prioritize health care for expectant mothers who struggle with substance abuse and other health illnesses and are incarcerated. At the end of the study, the results will be presented to the appropriate committee chairman in each chamber so that we as a governing body can help protect these mothers and their children. You could imagine being a young person is quite a challenge trying to get your life together if you're in jail, but also addicted to drugs and pregnant. It's really hard to rehabilitate. So we just want to do a study. 3% of women who enter jails in the U.S. are pregnant, which is roughly 1,622 women. In the fourth quarter of the last fiscal year of Virginia, over 22% of people were in jail for heavy drug use, a portion of that percentage being pregnant women. And currently, in Virginia, 1,444 women are incarcerated. So it's just a work group, and it's to, again, help these young people get their life together. And they have a triple threat of being incarcerated at a young age, being addicted to drugs, and pregnant. And we want to help rehabilitate them and give them a chance. And with that, I'll take questions, or hopefully we'll pass the bill.
Are there any questions to Senator McGuire? Those here in support? Anyone online in support? Anyone here in opposition? Senator Pavola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is my understanding that we are providing substance abuse treatment for all of our offenders, and is there a lack of resources, and that's why we're prioritizing pregnant women, or are you expecting something?
So what I'm hearing, and again, the work group will clarify, is that say they have 4 spots, and if the pregnant person is not signed up, they miss that spot. And I just think that, you know, just being in jail as a young person trying to get your life together is quite a challenge as a young person. But to have the triple threat of being addicted to drugs and pregnant and incarcerated, it's just really hard to get your life together at a young age.
Madam Chair.
If you would let me know that you want to speak, please. Senator Marston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's obviously, 2 different populations here. One in the Department of Corrections, where there are more formalized programs. There are some jails in Virginia that probably do have some advanced services. Would this look at both the prison population and jail? I would imagine that most of these women would be who are pregnant would be in jail as not Department of Corrections. Certainly it's possible they could be, but do you envision this as covering all incarcerated populations?
Well, I think that's a great idea because obviously that's to be determined by the work group, but I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Senator Boysko.
Thank you, patron, for the question for the patron. Madam Chair and Senator, I'm wondering where you did somebody bring this bill to you or request this specifically?
Yes,
Was this from D?
Several different people in the district have come to me and said this is a concern. We have a fairly significant women's prison in Goochland County where I live, and so folks in the district have come to me and said this is a concern. So again, it's a work group, it's a study.
Madam Chair, follow-up question, was the facility asking for it, people from the DOC?
Not the facility, but people who have family members who are
Okay.
dealing with addiction
Okay.
and needed help, and they couldn't get help. And I don't want to get into the details because I wasn't there, but if we could do a study and solve the problem.
Thank
and the
you.
more we've looked into it, the bigger the number seems to be. And so that's why I was like, okay, we'll do this.
Are there other questions or concerns? Did I call for public comment? Okay.
Madam Chair. Move to report.
Okay,
Let's see if it's going to report.
Senator Favola.
I was just going to make a motion, so I will second the motion.
Okay, the motion is to report, it's moved and seconded that Senate Bill 603 be reported. All those in favor, please vote aye. Those opposed, no.
Thank you,
Ayes
Madam Chair,
14,
members of the committee.
no, 0 abstentions, 1. That bill reports. Senator Hackworth.
Morning, Madam Chair. Today
Welcome
we
to
have
the- Welcome
Senate,
to the killing fields.
Senate Joint Resolution 15, and I'd like to move the amendment.
What amendment?
There should be an amendment line. You have that?
Move the amendment.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the amendment be adopted. What amendment is that?
Okay, so what this does is after line 49, it inserts, upon completion of the study, the Board of Veterinary Medicine shall submit this report to the House Committee on Ag, Chesapeake and Natural Resource Education, the Senate Committee on Ag, Conservation, Natural Resource, Education, and Health. These standing committees shall review the findings and recommendations of the report for the appropriate legislative, policy, and budgetary implication actions and make such recommendations as necessary. This basically clarifies that the completed report must come to both House and Senate committees and the Education and Health committees, and it directs us to review these studies for potential legislative action. And so explaining the study, Madam Chair, this was brought to me by the Virginia Farm Bureau, and I think they're here to speak on behalf of this. But it deals with our shortage of large animal vets in the Commonwealth, and the number of those individuals that support our farm and food supply is and health care associated with large animals is declining. I did not realize until I had a meeting in my district with Secretary Lohr and the farmers, and that was one of the biggest concerns was a lot of vets, when they go to school to be a veterinarian, they have to choose at some point whether they're going to be a large animal vet or a small animal vet, and most choose to be a small animal vet. And so we are seeing a decline, particularly in Southside, Central, and far Southwest Virginia. And of course, potential severe public health implications of our food supply isn't adequately cared for by these large, the implications by not having them would definitely do our food supply. So I would like to ask them to come and maybe just speak a little bit about this, and if you have some questions, we'd be glad to answer those. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Those in support of the legislation, please come forward. 3 minutes, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Susan Gaston on behalf of the Virginia Farm Bureau. We would like to thank Senator Hackworth for bringing this to you all today. I think many of you know that I'm very involved in the horse community, very active equestrian, and in my neck of the woods, down in Hampton Roads, my vet in Chesapeake has to travel to Accomack to see animals in distress. That's a 3-hour drive for her. That's a 3-hour drive back. The same is true in the areas where Senator Hackworth is residing and in other areas where there's a large cattle or swine operation. That then becomes an issue of food safety and truly an issue of animal welfare. So we think we can get some answers for you through these 2 years of working on potential solutions. And again, we look forward to being part of the effort, and thanks Senator Hackworth for bringing it to you all today. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Susan Seward with the Virginia Veterinary Medical Association. We strongly support this. We are really in desperate times trying to get folks to head out to the country to serve these large animals. Vet students are graduating with over $220,000 in student debt. Virginia Tech Vet School is $55,000 a year. So we have got to figure out how we can incentivize folks go into the country and, dealing with that colicky horse at 2 a.m. rather than go into a cat and dog clinic. And we've really got to dig deep to find some answers. So we support this study and would urge you to support. Thank you.
Madam Chair, my name is Brad Copenhaver. I represent the Virginia Agribusiness Council. I grew up on a beef cattle farm in Southwest Virginia, and I know firsthand kind of how important the relationship with your large animal vet is. The other two speakers, I think, described this well, but this is really crucial for our industry moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, Jim Liddell with the Virginia Beef Cattle Association. Our vets are so critical to our industry. I have about 75 mama cows back home in my county, and we're fortunate we have a local vet, but there are, just like there are food deserts, there are large animal vet deserts where they're not there, and we need more. And regrettably, only about 3% of the veterinary folks go into the large animal side of this. So it's very important to the Virginia livestock industry, beef, sheep, swine, goats. So please support this.
Anyone in opposition to Senate Joint Resolution 15? Senator Dean.
Madam Chair, I was just going to move to report the problems that they talked about are all over the state. It's just cheaper. Well, the people that retire with that debt can make a whole lot more money in the suburbs taking care of Fido and the cats and dogs than they can out in the country. And every rural county in the country probably has this problem, not just in Virginia. So I'll second the motion to report.
Okay, moved and okay, it's been moved. We haven't adopted the amendment. It's been moved and seconded that the amendment be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And it's been moved and seconded that SJ 15 be reported. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Senator Hackworth.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. SJ 22 comes at the request of Virginia State Police for a study to reduce economic stress of Virginia State Police to find ways to retain officers. An increasing number of retired Virginia State Police are concerned that they will outlive their financial resources. Many retirees rely primarily on fixed incomes from pensions, Social Security, and retirement savings. Excuse me. These incomes may not keep pace with the rising cost of living, particularly healthcare expenses and inflation, leaving retirees with limited resources to cover their needs. Concepts and solutions should be explored to ease the financial burden many retired Virginia State Police now face. Offering tax breaks on retirement pay could be a crucial incentive for recruiting and retaining qualified officers, ensuring the state maintains a strong and dedicated law enforcement workforce. There are currently 15 states that won't tax your pensions of state police, and includes Alabama, Illinois, Iowa, Hawaii, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, to name a few. What this Senate Joint Resolution does is directs the Department of Taxation to study tax policy solutions for reducing economic stress on retired Virginia State Police. They will determine the revenue received by the Commonwealth from taxes paid on retirement income by Virginia State Police and investigate tax policy options to alleviate economic stress on retired Virginia State Police living in the Commonwealth for those who served with Virginia State Police for at least 20 years. Because a lot of localities are also giving increased pay, we're losing a lot of Virginia State Police to localities, so they're being trained up, but they're leaving well before their 20 years. So this will be a great retention tool as well.
Senator Pavola.
Excuse me, economic stress is not identified anywhere here. I guess you're leaving it up to you're leaving it up to the group that meets to define
Yes.
economic
so,
stress.
So they will take a look and see how much of an impact, economic impact this will have if we were to implement something like this. Their job is to investigate tax policies or what policies would be put forth to help retain and attract Virginia State Police officers.
Madam Chair.
Senator Pavola.
Yes, I am concerned that we're just identifying one group that may be suffering economic stress, and there be many, many other groups, and I am very cautious about establishing this precedent, but I do respect the patron.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do state police have a special tax bracket? It says here, whereas paying higher taxes leads to less disposable income for retired state police. I just don't understand. Are they in a different retirement bracket or pay something higher than
Madam Chair, there's someone here that could speak to that.
Those here in support of the legislation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Oswald. I'm here on behalf of the Virginia State Police Association. And to answer your question, I'm unaware if there's a higher tax burden with respect to retired state troopers. This bill seeks to address a problem that is probably not singular to state police, but it is a significant issue. It has a layered difficulty in both being able to retire when that point comes, but it also can serve as a recruiting measure. And while recruiting and retention are important, retirement is equally important. In my position, I come in contact with many folks who are nearing retirement, and they oftentimes choose not to retire because they find it to not be economically feasible to do so. And in many instances, they'll stay until they're eligible to receive a medical benefit through the federal government or to otherwise be forced into retirement at age 70. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Peake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To possibly answer some of those questions, Madam Chair, for the patron, I know I dealt with former Senator Carrico of the Virginia State Police, and he had talked about Senator Foy. What we have in our districts are troopers who have reached full retirement age, who have all their time in. They're 55, 6, or 7. They're eligible to retire. They're worn out, ready to retire, but they can't retire because they cannot pay their health insurance through the state. And so what I think the senator and I are both trying to address is the troopers who are trying to retire, but due to the high cost of their health care and the low amount of their pension, they can't retire until they hit Medicare eligibility. I had a bill that was carried over to the tax committee that's going to be going on this summer, and I applaud the senator for this approach as well, trying to tackle it from several different angles, because and we have singled out our Virginia State troopers because they risk their lives for us every day, and they don't get paid much, and they're trying to retire, and they can't pay for their health care. So that's why we've singled them out.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just speaking to the resolution, I remember when I got into the General Assembly, we had state troopers who were collecting food stamps, right? Like, they have been historically underfunded, and we have made great strides in the past several years, I would say at least from the past 5 or 6 years, to bring their salaries back, up to a livable wage, making sure that we're looking at compression issues and making sure that we are looking at ways to, really support them, increase their training and other things. I stand with my colleagues here who are concerned about, picking state troopers out in front of everybody else. But I just want to, just for the record, to say that we have We have identified that they have not been given the full backing of the General Assembly in historic times, but we've been working very hard over the past few years to bring this up to the standard that they deserve, and appreciate the effort here, but not sure if this is exactly the right direction we should be going in.
So,
I have a substitute motion.
substitute motion?
I move that we carry this over, and perhaps next year we can tighten this quite a bit. If it is the health insurance issue, I think that's a very specific thing that can be addressed. But I'm not comfortable voting to look at this one specific category, as important as this category might be. I'd like to look at it for across the board, maybe just on that health insurance gap for a number of retirees from our state forces. So my motion is to carry it over.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that SJR 22 be carried over. We will vote on that motion, the substitute motion. All those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. 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 Those opposed?
No.
Okay. Let's do a recorded vote. All those in favor of SJR, please, SJ 22, vote aye. Those opposed to continue, please vote aye. Those not, vote no.
Aye 6, noes 8.
Aye 6, noes 8. So we go to the main motion. If I may state for the record, if you give a tax benefit to state police retirement, that requires similar treatment to federal law enforcement, and that's going to be a very expensive enterprise. So I hope that folks are willing to make that expensive investment.
Madam Chair.
Senator Marston, you're in queue.
I meant to be.
Senator Pete?
Yep, Madam Chair, and that was the whole point that came out with my bill, is constitutionality of it and how much it would cost, and that's why it is currently in that tax study committee that's going to be going on over the summer.
Which is why yours was carried over for study. Okay, so what is the motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would this be referred to finance? Is finance asking for it?
No.
This is a study.
This is a study.
They may need money to do the study.
What's the motion?
We have a motion to
The main motion is to report. Okay, the main motion is to report SJ 22. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No. Okay. Do we want to record that vote? So those in favor, please record your vote aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes are 8, noes are 7. SJ 22 is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 682 would create a work group to study universal licensure with several of healthcare professions, with the relevant state associations that represent those various healthcare professions here in Richmond with us. So appreciate any questions.
Did we adopt your substitute?
Move the substitute.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the substitute, please say aye. Aye. But we adopted the substitute in a previous committee,
Yes,
so we
in
don't need to do that
education
here.
and health.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry, Senator Suderline.
That's no problem. So that's what it does as a substitute. I think that it's something we all recognize. I think a lot of us would like to move closer to universal licensure in as many places as we can. and we recognize that there's reasons why there's differences to begin with, and trying to work through that process. So that's what this seeks to do.
Okay. Are there questions to Senator Evan?
Yes, for Senator Suline, Madam Chair, I wanted to ask if he's had conversations with either the Secretary of Health or the Secretary of Labor, and if they're supportive.
Yes, especially, yes, Madam Chair, I tell the Senator, both of them are interested in doing this.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, other questions from committee members? Are there those here in support of Senate Bill 682?
Chair?
Wait a minute. 1 minute, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Arnie Owens, the Director of the Department of Health Professions, and the governor strongly supports this bill.
I don't know what I did to upset the administration today.
Senator Favola.
It's the first time I've seen anybody this year.
Do you know?
Apparently, if you say you shouldn't raise the sales tax, bad things happen to you.
I'm unaware of any state that right now offers universal licensure. Is that correct, or is somebody from the administration willing to respond to that? I'm always willing to learn more information, but the latest information I received is not one state has this.
Madam Chair, if I may, yeah, I'm not sure that anyone does, and I think that that's one of the things we're going to look to see what we can in the different places we can do it. And is it truly universal, or is it simply moving closer to greater ease? But I think you understand the goal. If we one day lived in a union where all 50 states saw it the same way, that would be great. I don't think that's coming anytime soon, though.
Madam Chair. Senator Favola, then Senator Hashim. One follow-up comment. 2 years ago, and I did carry the bill, we had a major bill on reciprocal agreements. So if Virginia doctors were granted the privileges of the nearby states, then Virginia would also grant the doctors in nearby states an expeditious review of their paperwork to gain licensure in a shorter period of time. I mean, one of the reasons that our Board of Medicine actually exists is to sort of control the quality of care that's being provided to our Virginians. And part of that is done through the licensure process. So I mean, a universal concept to me would have to be a pretty high bar. So I'm just saying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a question for the patron, Senator Suderline. I really like interstate compacts. I've carried 3, working on one this session as well. And I know Senator Locke has a compact for our dental program as well. And but one thing I like about those interstate compacts is that they are coordinated, through Council of State Government as well as other major organizations, and they really look at the individual profession. They address those concerns, the regulatory bodies among all the states and so forth. I think doing it in a very deliberate and concentrated way ends up with a better product. What role do you see universal licensure playing in opposition to something that really takes a look at each profession individually and in concert with the necessary associations that govern those particular professions?
Madam Chair, if I may. Madam Chair, I would tell the Chair of Education and Health that I think I've supported all the compacts that have come through, and that I see them as complementary in the same larger effort. One of the things that motivates my interest in trying to increase the licensure is I previously represented a very rural district, and I got to see those challenges of, and so anything that I can make it easier for people to come to the rural areas, I want. And then under redistricting, I now represent about a majority of my constituents live in an urban setting, either in Salem or Roanoke City, and parts of Roanoke County that are urban. And in this year, I got to meet so many people door knocking in Roanoke City that had issues trying to become licensed in the Commonwealth. And they talked about the delays they experienced. And some of them were from other states, some of them were from other countries. That's something that Delegate Rasool, who I overlap with him 100% now, he had previously talked about hearing about that so much, and now I got to knock the same streets and hear the same concerns. So I think that this is something that can benefit our urban and rural areas, and I just want to see as many things as we can do to bring that about. And so that's what I hope comes from these conversations. There's a similar effort being carried by Delegate Price, who also represents a very urban district over in the Hampton Road side of the Commonwealth. So I think this is something that any progress we make on this is going to help people in different places in every corner of the Commonwealth.
Yep. Madam Chair,
Senator Peake.
I would just remind the patron that just yesterday he admonished me to say that we do not care what is being carried in the House or passed in the House when we are talking about bills in the Senate.
Madam Chair, if I may remind my seatmate, I would never suggest that you should do something because of what happened in the other chamber, only suggesting that there are other elected representatives in other situations that also care about this. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all my friends here today.
Okay, anyone here in opposition?
Anybody here is friend?
Okay, we need to wrap this up. Senator Boysko.
Just a quick question before a motion. How do the different societies, the associations feel about this? Did you work in collaboration with them? Are they part of this agreement that they want this? Medical Society, the nurses, the pharmacists, the dentists, did you bring them to the table together and work with them and they were all on board? Because I don't see any of them here.
Madam Chair, if I may. So this is the third time the bills come up this year. Originally came through one of our health subs. I can't remember which one I presented to. Actually, I think it was your Senator Boysko, and I did not hear. We presented it. Folks were fine with it because this is basically bringing them to the table for the conversation. We're not making anyone do anything. And then in education and health yesterday, it was, my count was it was about to report with more than 10 votes. But I understand that under our policies and procedures, it should come here because it had changed. It was referred here when it looked different, or I'm sorry, ma'am. It was referred to education and health when it was a different bill, and when it became a work group, at that point it should have come here. So I asked for it to come here so that if we like it, we advance. If we don't, I understand. I hope you like it.
Senator Favola.
Well, my motion is that we continue this next year. I do not think we're going to get all states to agree to some kind of universal licensure. I think this is a topic that is pretty complex and pretty broad. And part of the Board of Medicine is to actually regulate and if you will, discipline physicians. And one of the reasons that we've had a hard time actually moving reciprocal agreements forward for a regional license was the whole concept of disciplining physicians and who would be ultimately responsible in liability cases. This is really complex. I don't think a universal licensure is the way to go. I think you identified a problem that needs to be fixed, and I acknowledge that. We have some foreign-born doctors who are struggling, unnecessarily so, with our whole process, and that should be fixed. But my motion on this bill is that we continue it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 682 be continued. All those in favor of that motion, please vote aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes 8, no 6, 1 abstention. The bill will be continued.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Suderline. Senator Ayer.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Before you is Senate Joint Resolution 20. Should be Senate SJ 20. Yeah, no, that's not the right one up there, but it should be Senate Joint 20. Okay, so Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is requesting the Virginia Board of Workforce Development to study the funding models for non-credit workforce credential programs at the comprehensive community colleges here in Virginia. Under current law, all non-credit workforce credentials offered by the community colleges must be entirely self-sustaining from the tuition and fees charged to students. And the legislation simply seeks to review the VCCS's funding formula for non-credit workforce credentials to ensure sufficient funding and support to grow the number of credentials awarded, essentially to provide consistency in course offerings and to help aid in instructor recruitment. What happens is non-credit courses are regularly canceled if tuition payments do not cover the course expense, creating challenges for trainees and employers, and right now leading to the underutilization of training infrastructure. I think you will all say that right now we are trying to find ways to get more training into the hands of more individuals to really support our employers and our industries. And so this has been a mechanism that has long been used to do so, but as long as the tuition and expenses are tied to whether or not we offer those offerings at our community colleges, we sort of do a disadvantage to both employers and to the individuals seeking those credentials. And so I'm hoping that with this approach, we can actually take a look at whether or not this model is working, and you'll see throughout the language that there are very specific asks to assess whether or not there's a better approach that we could take. So that's essentially what this is trying to get at.
Madam Chair.
Senator Stewart, then Senator Eben.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope everybody will support this. It's a really good bill, and the only reason I mention this is because I just heard Tuesday night at a meeting where Germanna Community College gave a presentation, and they've got a specific team working on things like this. They are recruiting young people to come into these programs to be skilled for certain careers, and they're really good careers. And one of the things they mentioned that I thought was really interesting, and it made the program very effective, if their car breaks down and they can't get there, they're helping them. They're helping them fix their car. If they get displaced, there even were some homeless people they got in. They helped them find a place to live. Wow. They helped them get to class. I mean, it was really remarkable. And I was absolutely impressed at the work Germanna Community College was doing. And it just evidences why Senator Ayer's bill is such a good bill. So I hope we'll support it.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I will just note, I know we have a limited time, but this was introduced at the request of Newport News Shipbuilding. And so I do have Mr. John Cosgrove, who really can speak to how they have been impacted by the way this model is structured right now.
Just thought you'd throw that in because it's in my district.
Not at all, Madam Chair. Not at all.
Madam Chair.
Senator Eben.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it would help the shipyard, and I think that's a good thing, and to get more qualified workers in our workforce. So if I could, I would move to report.
Second. Can I complete what I'm doing here? Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions for the patron. I'm curious what kind of conversations, Senator Aird, you've had with the VCCS leadership on this. And secondly, this, I think, would overhaul the VCCS funding formula in fairly significant ways. So that's why I really want to make sure that the leadership from the VCCS is on board. The credit side of the House of VCCS operates, as most of our colleges and universities do, through student tuition, through federal Pell Grants, and the support from state. The non-credit on most of our community colleges is operated as a separate entity, and their funding comes largely from this public-private partnership that we have, most especially around many of our industry folks. And their funding comes from their ability to generate curricular programs that serve those critical industry partners' needs. So this would overhaul the system in significant ways. It would put the credit tuition dollars at play for non-credit workforce credentials. And so I really hope that the system office leadership is very much a part of this conversation. So I'm just curious what discussions you've had already.
Madam Chair and Senator Hashmi, thank you for those comments and that feedback. Obviously, your expertise in the community college space is very valued. I would say that as a result of this being a study, it's not an attempt to do harm to the VCCS or overhaul their current funding models, strategies, and approaches. I think we're just trying to get a baseline assessment of the impact that that is having right now on non-credit programs and courses, and just a perimeter check of whether or not there was any level of opposition to doing this assessment. My office has not received any concerns by the VCCS, and ultimately I think that is because this is a study and not really an attempt to direct the General Assembly to make a change at this time.
Thank you, Senator Aird. Although this is a study, there may be some cost involved. So if there's going to be a recommendation to move this forward, it will have to go to finance.
I certainly understand, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. John, you got anything you want to add? Quickly.
Yep. Madam Chair, members of the committee, the patron did a Tom Cosgrove on behalf of HII.
I was thinking John Ward. You're Tom.
I thought you were thinking of John Cosgrove. I mean, we've been mistaken enough over the years, but no, Tom Cosgrove, Newport News Shipbuilding. We appreciate the patron bringing this bill and her very fine explanation of it, and she articulated well the challenges we are having getting workers. And I will note that if every class, every cohort of our training programs at our community colleges had been offered last year, if none had been canceled, if everyone had been at full capacity, we would have brought in almost 200% more workers out of the community colleges. So it really is a big impact it's having. And Senator Hashmi, to your question, we have shared this bill before it was introduced with Dr. DeRay, who was comfortable with this direction and felt like, as Senator Aird pointed out, this is a study. It's only going to bring forward courses of action that you all will be able to decide on later, but he was comfortable with this direction, so we have had those conversations with them. Thank you.
Senator Vovola.
Madam Chair, I move that we report the bill and refer it to finance.
Second.
Moved and seconded that Senate Joint Resolution 20 be reported and referred to Senate Finance. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank the committee.
Okay. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. SJR 25 is requesting the Department of Environmental Quality to do a study on our groundwater resources. They have not had any updated information since 1992, and we have a significant, I guess you would say, resource issue regarding groundwater. You all know I brought several bills, and this is just one in in the mix of 3 or so that I'm trying to get some help with. And it really was precipitated by the fact that there's a neighborhood, and you'll see a bill on the floor today, which hopefully will pass, what came out of committee unanimously with the exception of one abstention, where a neighborhood with 116 homes in Fairfax has been told by DEQ that they have got to get off of well water and go on to city water at the expense of $60,000 or $70,000 a resident. So it's pretty significant. It's an issue that I've been concerned about ever since I got elected, and we've never really taken any steps to address it. And so this is just to ask DEQ to update that 1992 Groundwater Management Act, and hopefully we can kind of determine how big that pie is and how best we can allocate it to make it the most impactful for all the citizens, businesses, and everybody in Virginia. There may be somebody who wants to testify online, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. We have 2 people online, I believe, but let me get to, is there anyone here who wishes to speak in support of SJ 25? Okay, we have folks online who want to speak. 1 minute.
Jay Ford, please unmute, turn on your mic and begin your testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jay Ford with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I want to thank Senator Stewart for a really important piece of legislation. Many of you are aware communities from Northern Virginia to Hampton Roads, Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, Eastern Shore are all facing groundwater issues. And as he pointed out, this law hasn't been updated since 1992. Just to put that in perspective, where I live on Virginia's Eastern Shore, they discovered new paleo channels, new sources of water that run underground since 1992. And this law does not reflect even the most basic science at this point of how we understand how groundwater functions. So the need to, in a comprehensive way, our groundwater law is tremendous, both from a scientific standpoint and I think a large concern around climate impact. So we hope you will support this bill, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Pat Calvert, please unmute, turn on your camera, begin. Pat Calvert.
Okay, I think that concludes those online. Anyone on the committee with any comments regarding SJ 25? Second. Moved and seconded that SJ 25 be reported. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That's reported. Senator McPike, you stand between us and getting out of here.
You got it. Senate Bill 594, Madam Chair, is, and I do have some, it's kind of technical amendments, which is to, instead of doing a work group, have the EMS Advisory Board for that organization to create the group. And then I don't know if you just want to touch base on the amendments so we can adopt them.
Okay. Report the amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a series of amendments that have the effect of having the EMS Advisory Board doing the study and basically reviewing the eligibility requirements rather than having the Office of Emergency Medical Services to convene a work group.
Moved and seconded that the amendments be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The amendments are adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so this work group would be focusing on addressing career fatigue and wellness. This is a serious issue within EMS, both professional and volunteer. And the work would look at costs associated with joining or establishing a program and make recommendations of paying cost around sort of the wellness and sort of the fatigue that's experienced. And so it's an important issue and directs the EMS Advisory Board to pursue that study.
Are there any questions to Senator McPatrick from the committee? Anyone here in support of Senate Bill 594? Thank you so much. Anyone here in opposition? Moved and seconded that Senate Bill 594 be reported. All those in favor, please vote aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes 15, no 0. That bill is reported, and I do believe that clears our docket.
Hallelujah, praise the Lord.
Okay. Committee will rise.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.